The first match struck at 2:13 inches the morning. Iris Penn woke inside the Bookmobile garage to the smell of kerosene and saw a shadow crouched beside the rusted bus. Someone had pulled a metal drawer from beneath the old circulation desk and scattered hundreds of library checkout cards across the concrete floor. Then the stranger touched flame to the first stack. Iris ran barefoot through freezing water dripping from the broken roof and smothered the fire with her coat. By the time she looked up, the intruder was gone. Nothing else had been taken, not her tools, not the coins in her bag, not even the copper wiring hanging loose from the walls. Only the cards had mattered. The county had sold her the condemned garage for $8 after firing her from the library and taking away the small room that came with her job. Everyone said the place held nothing but moldy books and a dead bus without an engine. But one card had survived the flames. There was no borrower's name on it, only a blue swallow drawn in faded ink. Iris had seen that bird before. It was stamped inside the only book she had carried from one foster home to another since childhood. But what nobody knew was why someone was willing to burn a garage to erase it. By dawn, the wet checkout cards had curled like dead leaves across Iris's work table. She did not try to read them first. She numbered them, 1 through 83, written in pencil on scraps from a grocery bag. Then she arranged the cards by scorch pattern, water damage, paper weight, and the residue left by the drawer that had held them. It was the kind of order no one noticed until it vanished, and Iris had spent 16 years learning how disappearance usually began. Not with fire, with a box placed on the wrong shelf, a date entered under the wrong year. A record described so vaguely that no one searching for it would know it existed. At Bellwether County Library, Iris had been the person who found what others misplaced. She remembered which ledger had a torn red corner and which folder had returned with a different brass fastener. That talent had once earned quiet praise. Then, 3 weeks earlier, the board delivered 12 cartons of circulation records to the basement and ordered her to sign a disposal certificate before the cartons were opened. Iris refused. She asked why records from the old Bookmobile route were being destroyed separately. Meredith Voss, chairwoman of the Library Foundation, folded her hands. Some histories serve no one by surviving. The next morning, Iris's employee key stopped working. By noon, her job was gone. By sunset, the custodian had placed her suitcase outside the small apartment attached to the library. Now wind pushed cold rain through the garage roof, while Iris rubbed soot from her fingers. Her damp coat hung beside the oil heater, one sleeve blackened beyond repair. On the table lay the blue swallow card beneath clean glass. Beside it rested the book that had followed her through 6 foster homes. The Swallow Who Came Back in Spring. The cover had split along the spine. At one foster home, a woman had thrown it away because Iris had outgrown it. Iris had pulled it from the trash, cleaned the pages, and hidden it beneath her mattress until her next placement. She opened the cover, but did not compare the birds again. She already knew they matched. Instead, she studied the circular stamp around them. Bellwether County Traveling Library. The card's ink had faded gray. The mark inside the book was darker, but both showed the same crooked tail and the same tiny break above the bird's head. The stamp itself had been damaged before either impression was made. The card and book had passed through the same piece of equipment, perhaps years apart. Iris turned to the date column. One remained readable, the 14th of October 1994. She was 38. According to the birth record in her personnel file, her mother had died in 1988, less than a week after giving birth. The date proved nothing by itself, but someone had entered the garage at night to destroy it. Tires rolled over wet gravel. Iris slid the card beneath the book as a cream-colored sedan stopped outside. Meredith Voss stepped out under a black umbrella, wearing pearl earrings and shoes too fine for the mud. She paused at the yellow warning tape Iris had stretched across the damaged side door. "I heard there was trouble," Meredith said. "I haven't reported it." A flicker crossed the older woman's face before concern settled there. Caleb Shaw saw smoke from the county road. He called someone on the board. Iris knew the name. Caleb was the mechanic blamed for stripping the Bookmobile's engine after the route closed. No one had mentioned he lived nearby. Meredith looked past Iris toward the bus. "Was anything taken?" "No." "Damaged?" "Some paper." "What kind?" Meredith had not asked whether Iris was hurt. Her eyes stayed on the dark interior behind her. "Old cards," Iris said. Meredith tightened her grip on the umbrella. "Were any intact?" The question came too quickly. Iris remained silent. "Those records may contain private information," Meredith said. "Names of families, children, people still alive. Let the Foundation take custody of them. You told the board the files had already been destroyed. I said they were scheduled for lawful disposal. You signed the certificate." Meredith smiled. "Grief and uncertainty can make a person hold too tightly to meaningless things. You've lost your job, your room, your stability. I don't blame you for wanting these scraps to matter." It was kindness used like a hand at someone's back, guiding her toward a door. Iris had heard it from foster workers explaining why another family had changed its mind. She had heard it from the administrator who said her birth records were incomplete for her protection. She closed the book. Meredith glanced toward the rear of the bus. The hidden drawer behind the circulation desk should never have been left there. Iris looked at her. The drawer was invisible from the entrance. Even Iris had found it only because its screws were cleaner than the surrounding metal. "You said you'd never been inside this bus." "I reviewed old inventories. There's no drawer on the inventory." Rain hammered the roof. Meredith stepped back. "You have 29 days before the county re-inspects this structure. Think carefully about whether you want to spend them fighting over ruined paper." She turned toward the sedan. Mud clung to her soles. The tread formed narrow V-shaped channels. The same pattern pressed into the soot beside the burned cards. Iris waited until the sedan disappeared. Then she locked the garage, returned to the work table, and lifted the blue swallow card beneath the lamp. The 14th of October 1994. 6 years after the county said her mother was dead. 29 days earlier, Iris had stood beneath the fluorescent lights of the county auction room with $8 in her coat pocket and nowhere to sleep after sunset. The Bookmobile garage appeared on the final page of the sale catalog. No photograph, no inspection report, just a parcel number, a warning about structural defects, and a note that the county accepted no responsibility for anything left inside. The auctioneer read the description without looking up. Former traveling, library maintenance garage, roof failure, water intrusion, disabled vehicle on site. Buyer assumes removal. A man near the back laughed. Removal costs more than the land. No one raised a hand when the opening bid was called at $5. Iris lifted hers. The auctioneer blinked, then pointed. 5. A scrap dealer offered 6, mostly to amuse the room. Iris said 7. He grinned and said 8. She looked down at the money in her palm. It was all she had after paying for one night at a roadside motel, but the motel wanted another $42 by noon. The garage at least had walls. 9? The auctioneer asked. The scrap dealer shook his head. Iris counted again and found one coin stuck beneath the folded bill. $8.50. The room laughed harder. The auctioneer struck the block. By evening, Iris owned the worst building in Bellwether County. Rainwater ran through the roof in 6 places. The office window had been boarded from outside. The concrete floor had split around the bus tires, and one wall leaned far enough that Iris could slide her fingers through the seam where it had separated from the frame. The county inspector met her at the door. "You have 30 days, he said. "Brace the west wall, seal the fuel tank, restore one safe electrical circuit, and prove the roof isn't in immediate danger of collapse. And if I can't, we condemn it again and take possession." He handed her a yellow notice. A fresh paragraph had been added beneath the printed conditions. All archival materials, records, and circulation documents remain property of the Bellwether County Library System. The main text had been printed by a modern office machine. The new paragraph showed uneven pressure, a faintly raised letter R, and a darker ribbon strike on every capital A. A different typewriter. Iris touched the date beside the inspector's signature. It had been entered 2 days before the auction. Who added this? He glanced at the page. Standard language. It isn't on the other property notices. His eyes moved toward the bus. "You bought a garage, Miss Penn. Don't make it more complicated than that." He left before she could ask another question. That night, Iris discovered the heater. It sat behind a stack of rotted road maps, an old oil unit with a dented casing, and a hand-painted warning not to turn it above level 3. The fuel line had been disconnected, but the tank behind the garage still held enough clean oil to burn. She repaired the line with a clamp from the bus toolkit. The flame caught on the second try. Heat moved slowly into the room, carrying the smell of dust and old metal. It did not make the garage comfortable, but it made one corner survivable. Behind the building, a rusted gutter fed rainwater into a covered cistern. Iris tested the water with strips from the library emergency kit. It was not safe to drink without boiling, but it was clear enough to wash soot, clean tools, and keep herself from spending money she did not have. The place was not alive, but it had not finished dying. 2 days later, Meredith Voss arrived with a folder and a smile. "I've been thinking about your situation," she said. "The foundation could purchase the property from you for $3,000. Iris looked past her, at the split roof and leaning wall. "You said it was worthless. It is, in practical terms. The offer is charitable. And everything inside? Transferred with the building." Meredith opened the folder. The agreement contained no inventory and no distinction between books, machinery, furniture, or personal items Iris had brought with her. "You could rent an apartment," Meredith continued. "Start over somewhere healthier." Iris read the final clause. The seller agreed to surrender all records, containers, mechanical compartments, hidden fixtures, and contents not presently visible. Why does it mention hidden fixtures? Meredith's smile held. Boilerplate language. No, it isn't. A gust pressed rain through the roof. One drop struck the agreement and spread across Meredith's signature. Iris closed the folder. "I'm not selling." The smile disappeared. "You may not have a choice after the inspection." When Meredith drove away, Iris returned to the auction documents and compared the added clause to the purchase agreement. The same damaged capital A appeared in both. Someone had prepared the restriction before Iris ever raised her hand. She searched the garage until midnight. Beneath the narrow cot she had made from shelving boards, one floor panel sounded hollow. Iris pried it loose and pulled out a children's book wrapped in waxed cloth. A silver moon had been drawn inside the cover. Between two swollen pages lay a strip of carbon paper. She held it beneath the lamp and rubbed the surface lightly with the side of a pencil. Words emerged from pressure marks left decades earlier. "I did not sign because I wanted to lose you." Outside, tires slowed on the county road. They did not stop, but someone had already known Iris would find the garage. The next morning, Iris found tire marks on the gravel outside the garage. They did not cross the threshold. Whoever had slowed on the road had stayed far enough away to avoid leaving a clear tread. Only 2 shallow curves remained where the driver had braked, watched, and moved on. Iris photographed them before the rain could wash them away. Then she locked the moon-marked book in a metal tool chest and turned her attention to the bus. The county inventory described it as mechanically stripped, structurally unsound, and suitable only for disposal. That description had bothered her since the auction. A vehicle abandoned for 40 years should have shown neglect in every direction: cut wires, torn hoses, rusted bolts, missing copper. This one had been dismantled with patience. The engine bay was empty, but each fuel line had been capped. Electrical leads were bundled and wrapped in waxed cloth. Bolts had been returned to their holes after the engine was removed, preventing the threads from corroding. No scrap thief worked that way. Iris climbed through the rear entrance and examined the floor around the circulation desk. The fire had blackened one corner, but the metal tracks beneath the shelves were still visible. She pushed against the nearest bookcase. It moved half an inch. A second push made it glide along the wall before stopping against a hidden latch. The entire shelf had once been mounted on a mechanical rail, allowing the interior to change shape. Behind it ran a narrow channel filled with thread. Blue, yellow, white, red. The strands had been stitched through tiny holes in the edges of old book labels, then clipped short enough to escape notice. Iris carried 3 surviving cards to the channel. The blue swallow card had a faded blue fiber caught in one corner. The moon card matched a silver-gray thread sewn into the spine of the book she had found beneath the cot. The symbols were not isolated marks. They were part of a system. Metal struck concrete behind her. Iris turned. An older man stood just inside the side door, holding a tire iron. He wore a canvas coat darkened by rain and a gray beard cut close to his jaw. His left hand trembled slightly, but the tire iron did not. "You need to stop opening those walls," he said. "You entered private property. You bought a building. That bus is still county equipment. The county sold it with the property. That's what they told you?" Iris kept one hand near the screwdriver on the desk. "You're Caleb Shaw." His expression changed. "Who said?" "Meredith Voss. She said you stripped the engine." "She would." Caleb looked toward the scorched floor. "Did the fire take all of them?" Iris did not answer. His eyes moved to the tool chest, then back to her face. You knew cards were burned. I saw smoke. From the county road? That's where I live. The smoke was inside a closed garage in the middle of a storm. Caleb lowered the tire iron. For a moment, only rain rattled against the roof. I saw a car leave, he said. What kind? Dark. County plates covered in mud. Why didn't you tell the sheriff? Because the sheriff's brother sits on the foundation board. Iris studied him. His boots were broad and flat, with a block tread. Not the narrow V-shaped pattern left near the burned cards. You took the engine. Yes. To sell it? No. Then where is it? Safe. The answer sounded rehearsed. Caleb moved deeper into the bus and touched the edge of the sliding shelf. His fingers found the hidden latch without searching. They were going to tow this bus to the crusher in 2001, he said. I pulled the engine, the transmission linkage, and the steering coupler. Made it too expensive to move quickly. You could have removed the records. I didn't know where Helen put them. Helen Ward? The route librarian. The name appeared on a handful of maintenance slips Iris had found in the office, always beside handwritten changes to the northern route. Why protect the bus? Caleb looked at the empty shelves. Because Helen asked me to. Iris picked up a damaged book label with yellow thread. What do the colors mean? I don't know. You expect me to believe you dismantled this vehicle to protect it, but never asked why? I asked once. And? She told me that sometimes a name was the most dangerous thing a woman could leave behind. The sentence settled between them. Caleb walked toward the driver's seat. A rusted lock sat beneath the dashboard, nearly hidden behind an electrical panel. He reached beneath his shirt and removed a small brass key from a cord around his neck. Iris stared at it. The county inventory listed every key to the Bookmobile as missing since 1986. Caleb inserted the key, but did not turn it. This opens the rear service compartment and the old root box, he said. If the box is still there. You said you didn't know where Helen hid the records. I don't. The root box was empty the last time I saw it. When? The week Saint Agnes closed. Iris had not mentioned Saint Agnes. Caleb saw the recognition in her face and stepped away from the lock. You found the white stop mark. It was not a question. Iris took the blue swallow card from her pocket, keeping most of it covered by her hand. Caleb's face lost color. That one shouldn't be here. Whose was it? He looked toward the garage door, as if expecting another car to appear. Not a child's. Then whose? Caleb glanced at the swallow again. A woman who came back every Thursday for 12 years, even after they told her there was no one left to find. Caleb returned before sunrise towing a low farm trailer. The Bookmobile's engine rested on it beneath an oilcloth, its openings capped, and its metal dark with protective grease. He also brought 2 wooden crates, a coil of insulated wire, and a battery wrapped in an army blanket. He set everything beside the bus without asking permission. You kept it all this time? Iris asked. I turned it by hand every month so it wouldn't seize. We are not installing it today. Lights first. Moving comes later. You said the root box might still be inside. I said the compartment might open. That isn't the same thing. No. He carried the battery through the rear door. Iris followed, watching him connect the leads to the old interior circuit. The first attempt produced only a click. On the second, 3 ceiling lamps flickered weakly above the shelves. For the first time, the Bookmobile looked less like a wreck and more like a room someone had left in the middle of a task. Caleb tested the sliding mechanism beneath the shelves. One rail responded. Another groaned but held. Iris used the movement to pull out books trapped against the wall, placing each one on a canvas sheet in the garage. She worked by condition rather than title. Dry enough to open, damp but stable, mold spreading, binding too fragile to move. By noon, the floor held 8 careful rows. Nearly every damaged volume carried a colored thread sewn into the inner edge of its label. Blue threads appeared beside bird symbols, gray beside moons, yellow beside flowers, red beside needles. The pattern was too consistent to be decoration. Iris opened a book marked with a red thread. 2 pages near the center had swollen together. She separated them with a thin metal spatula and found a strip of carbon paper pressed along the gutter. There was no inked message, only indentations. She laid the strip over a sheet of white paper and rubbed it gently with graphite. I asked for another week. A second line emerged beneath it. They told me the papers were already signed. Caleb stood across the table, silent. You knew women were leaving messages, Iris said. I knew Helen carried books where the county said there were no borrowers. Saint Agnes? He looked toward the door. The white stop. Why call it that? The building was painted white. So were the fence, the van, even the uniforms. Helen said the women inside were not supposed to appear on a public route sheet. Iris opened another book. A message pressed into the carbon read, "I will come every Thursday." The words did not belong to the blue swallow card. The symbol inside this cover was a flower. Another mother. By late afternoon, Iris had uncovered 5 messages from 4 different books. They told me you had already gone. Your name was not the name they gave you. I never refused to see you. Do not believe I stopped coming. None contained a full name. Helen had protected the writers by leaving only symbols, dates, and thread colors. Or perhaps someone had forced her to. A certified envelope arrived before dusk. The Bellwether County Library System demanded the return of all circulation materials within 72 hours. The notice accused Iris of unauthorized possession of confidential information and warned that continued refusal could result in criminal action. The signature belonged to Meredith Voss. Caleb read the first page and handed it back. She doesn't have authority to threaten criminal charges. She has people who do. You need copies. Copies can expose names. Then make copies no one can read without your index. Iris looked at the rows of books. That was how a library worked. A shelf held objects. A catalog gave them meaning. Separate the two, and a person could preserve evidence without revealing every life inside it. She began recording only neutral details. Symbol, thread color, publication date, route stamp, and location found. No names, no guesses. Caleb repaired a second circuit while she worked. At 9:40, an exterior floodlight above the garage door came alive. A county sedan sat on the hill beyond the road. Its lights were off. The windshield reflected the pale sky, hiding whoever sat inside. Caleb reached for his coat. "Stay here," Iris said. "That car has been watching us for an hour. Then walking toward it is what they expect." She turned off the new floodlight. The sedan remained for another 9 minutes before rolling away. Afterward, Iris examined the route stamps under a magnifying lens. Most showed weekdays and recognized stops. Mill Creek School, North Fork, Glendale Church, but every 4th Thursday, the sequence jumped. A departure stamp appeared at 2:10 p.m. The next official stop was not until 5:45, though it lay only 12 miles away. More than 3 hours had been erased from the route. On the back of one card, almost hidden beneath a water stain, someone had drawn a small white square. Iris searched the office cabinets and found an old road map folded behind a maintenance ledger. The northern edge had been cut away with a blade. Caleb stared at the missing section. That's where Saint Agnes stood. Why remove it from the map? Because after it closed, the county said the place had never been on the library route. Iris returned to the books. One volume marked with a gray thread had been checked out on a Sunday when the library was closed. Another carried 3 return stamps from the same date, each struck with a different pressure. Someone had been using the stamps to record visits, not loans. She placed the books in chronological order. The symbols repeated across years. Some ended suddenly. Others continued long after the children connected to them would have left infancy behind. Then Iris found a message beneath the spine of a book, stamped with the white square. "Rose, if you still have the button, do not give it to the foundation." Caleb leaned closer. "Rose who?" Iris read the faded service record tucked inside the back cover. A volunteer nurse had signed the route receipt in 1991. Ruth Danner. Outside, the county sedan returned to the hill. This time, the driver did not bother turning off the headlights. Ruth Danner lived in a narrow house behind the abandoned railway depot, where the porch had been enclosed with mismatched windows, and every curtain remained drawn. Iris knocked twice. No answer. Caleb pointed to a fresh tire track beside the garden gate. The narrow V-shaped tread cut through the wet soil. "Same kind?" he asked. "Close enough to matter." Before Iris could knock again, 3 locks shifted behind the door. Ruth opened it no wider than the chain allowed. She was small, with white hair pinned at the nape of her neck and one hand hidden inside her cardigan pocket. "I don't buy anything," she said. "We're not selling," Iris replied. "We came about the traveling library." The door began to close. Caleb placed his palm against the frame. "Helen Ward sent books here." Ruth's face hardened. "Helen Ward is dead." "That doesn't make the route disappear," Iris said. Ruth looked from Iris to Caleb. You should not have brought him. Caleb removed his hand. You know me? I know what you did to that bus. I kept it from being crushed. You kept it where no one could find what Helen left. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he did not answer. Ruth tried to shut the door again. Iris took the moon-marked book from her bag and held it where the older woman could see the gray thread stitched inside the cover. Ruth stopped. Her hidden hand came out of the cardigan pocket. She held a white button, yellowed at the edges, with 4 holes around a shallow crescent cut. The same crescent appeared on the card Iris had found beneath the garage floor. Rose, Iris said. Ruth's fingers closed around the button. No one has called me that in 50 years. Someone left a message for you. There were many messages. From mothers at Saint Agnes? Ruth glanced toward the street before unfastening the chain. Come inside, quickly. The front room smelled of starch and boiled tea. Ruth did not offer them chairs. She took the moon book, opened it without searching, and pressed one thumb against the gutter where the carbon strip had been hidden. You found more than this, she said. Iris did not answer. Ruth looked at Caleb. You should have destroyed the vehicle when Helen died. She made me promise not to. She made promises to everyone. Most of them got people hurt. Did she hurt the women? Iris asked. Ruth turned sharply. No. Then who did? The older woman crossed to a cabinet and removed a tin sewing box. Inside were buttons from uniforms, each marked on the back with a bird, flower, moon, or needle. The women were not allowed to keep letters, Ruth said. Not after the papers were signed. What papers? Relinquishment forms, consent forms. Whatever name made it easier for the men upstairs to sleep. Were they signed willingly? Ruth gave her a tired look. Some were told they could leave only after signing. Some were sedated. Some were told their babies had died. A signature is not consent when every door is locked. Caleb lowered his eyes. Iris opened her notebook but did not write. Why the symbols? Names could be searched. Symbols could be mistaken for decoration. Helen matched the books. I matched the uniforms. If a mother returned, the button told us which message belonged to her. And the children? We rarely knew where they went. Ruth touched the white button. Sometimes the foundation knew. A floorboard creaked beneath Iris's foot. Ruth flinched, and the sewing box slipped from her hands. Buttons scattered across the rug. Iris knelt to gather them. One had the blue swallow cut into its back. Ruth saw it in her hand. Eleanor. The name came out like breath. Iris froze. What did you call me? Ruth snatched the button away. I said leave it. No. You said Eleanor. I'm old. I misspeak. You knew the swallow. Ruth stepped backward until she reached the cabinet. Headlights swept across the curtains. A black sedan stopped at the curb. Ruth's face emptied. You need to go through the kitchen. Who is that? Caleb asked. No questions. Go. A man in a dark coat walked up the path. Through the lower pane, Iris saw mud packed into the narrow V-shaped channels of his shoes. He knocked once. Mrs. Danner? Miss Voss sent me. Ruth gripped Iris's wrist. You cannot make them believe you by showing them everything at once, she whispered. They will call you unstable, then call the records stolen. Who is Eleanor? The knock came again. Ruth released her. Go. Caleb pulled Iris toward the kitchen. They left through the back door and crossed 2 yards before reaching the alley. From behind the fence, Iris heard the front door open. The man spoke too softly to understand. Ruth answered once. Then the black sedan drove away with her in the rear seat. By noon, Meredith's statement appeared on the county radio and newspaper website. She accused Iris of removing protected records, harassing an elderly former employee, and exploiting unverified adoption stories for personal gain. The article included a photograph of Iris taken outside the auction room. Someone had prepared the attack before she visited Ruth. Iris and Caleb returned to the garage after dark. The side door stood open. A chemical smell reached them before the lights came on. The metal chest had been dragged to the center of the floor. Its lock was broken. The surviving checkout cards lay inside, soaked with kerosene. A single unburned match rested on top. Beneath it was a note written in block letters. Next time, you will not wake up. Iris did not sleep. She and Caleb carried the soaked cards to the driest corner of the garage, separated them with wax paper, and set 2 fans to move cold air across the table. Heat would warp the ink. Sunlight would fade it. Every choice had to preserve what remained without destroying what might still be hidden. By dawn, the kerosene smell had settled into the walls. Caleb examined the broken lock. They knew which container to open. They knew where Ruth was. They knew when we left. And they know the cards survived. Iris looked toward the bus. Then we stopped treating the cards as the only evidence. The root box had once sat beneath the driver's console. Caleb had opened the compartment and found only rust, wire, and a rectangular patch where something had been removed. But the restored shelf mechanism made one section of the floor vibrate whenever it moved. They cleared the books from the front half of the bus. Caleb connected the auxiliary battery and pressed the control switch. The left shelf moved 3 inches, stopped, then shifted again with a grinding noise. A metal rod beneath the floor turned with it. "That rod shouldn't be there," he said. Iris knelt beside the driver's seat. The rod disappeared into a sealed panel behind the seat frame. 4 screws held the panel in place. 3 were rusted. The 4th had been replaced. Caleb reached for a wrench. "Photograph it first," Iris said. She recorded the panel, screw heads, floor, and shelf position. Then Caleb removed the screws one at a time and placed them in labeled envelopes. Behind the panel sat a narrow metal box coated in gray dust. The brass key around Caleb's neck opened it. Inside were root sheets, folded receipts, index slips, and a ledger bound with cloth tape. None carried the Saint Agnes name. Instead, a white square appeared beside dates when the bus had vanished from the public schedule. Iris spread the papers across the circulation desk. Each white square stop included a symbol, a number, and 2 columns marked Received and Delivered. Some rows showed 6 letters received and none delivered. Others showed 1 delivered after 11 months. The blue swallow appeared again and again. For 12 years. Iris followed the dates with her pencil. The first entry came weeks after her recorded birth. The last came in 2000. Her mother's death certificate said 1988. Caleb stood beside her without speaking. Iris turned the page. A note in Helen Ward's handwriting had been added beside the final swallow entry. Returned Thursday. Still asking. No forwarding address provided. The words blurred. Iris closed her eyes once, opened them, and copied the sentence into her notebook. She would not let grief decide what the evidence meant. The receipts carried the letterhead of the Voss Family Foundation. Payments arrived within days of certain white square stops. Some were labeled maternity assistance. Others were called placement donations, transportation contributions, or administrative gifts. The amounts rose whenever the child's original name disappeared from later records. "This is not proof they sold children," Caleb said. "No, it proves money moved. And the root sheets prove letters moved. Or failed to." She found 3 receipts bearing the surname of a current county judge. Another matched a library board member. The foundation had not merely protected private histories. It had built alliances from them. One receipt stopped her. It was dated 2 days before Bellwether County opened a foster file under the name Iris Penn. The payment line carried no child's name, only the blue swallow symbol and the words "permanent placement completed." She photographed it before touching the next page. A car door closed outside. Meredith entered alone. She did not appear surprised to see the open panel. "You found it," she said. Iris placed one hand over the ledger. "You knew it was here. I knew Helen kept records she had no right to keep. Records of women asking where their children went. Records that could destroy families who had nothing to do with decisions made decades ago." Meredith set a leather folder on the desk and opened it. Inside was a typed agreement, a bank draft, and a sealed envelope bearing Iris's name. "The foundation will pay for the repairs," Meredith said. "We will restore the bus. You will receive an archival position and an apartment. And the box? Transferred to protected custody. Your custody. To professionals." Iris touched the envelope. "What is this?" "The complete information we have regarding your mother." Caleb stepped forward. "You told the county those records did not exist." Meredith ignored him. "An address, a legal name, medical information." Enough for Iris to stop wondering. "What do you want me to sign?" "A confidentiality agreement. You may keep a private copy of your own file. Everything else is sealed." Iris read the first page. The agreement prohibited her from discussing Saint Agnes, the symbols, root records, payments, Helen Ward, Ruth Danner, or anyone identified through the materials. Violation required repayment of all benefits and allowed the foundation to seek damages. It did not protect privacy. It purchased silence. Meredith softened her voice. "You have spent your life asking one question. I am giving you the answer. And the others? You do not know what they want. Neither do you. Some people have good parents, stable marriages, children who do not need their histories torn apart. Then they should be allowed to choose. Meredith's expression hardened. Choice is not always merciful. Iris looked at the envelope. For 38 years, every institution had told her to accept what little information it chose to provide. Now the answer might be within reach. All she had to do was close the door behind her. Meredith tapped the agreement. The blue swallow does not prove anything. Caleb stopped moving. Iris lifted her eyes. She had not shown Meredith the card. She had not mentioned the symbol to the sheriff, the newspaper, or the library board. Even Ruth had spoken its name only after the black sedan arrived. How do you know about the swallow? Meredith's hand remained on the folder. I reviewed old summaries. There is no swallow in the summaries. You cannot know what the foundation holds, but you know what I hold. Meredith closed the folder. You are confusing suspicion with evidence. No, Iris said. I am separating them. She slid the sealed envelope back without opening it. Meredith stared at it. You may not receive another chance. If the truth about my mother requires everyone else to stay erased, it is not mine to keep. For the first time, Meredith's composure broke. You have no idea what that box can do. The words were too honest to take back. She left without the agreement. Iris waited until the card disappeared, then returned to the ledger. The root sheets were numbered by year. 1987 was complete. 1989 began with page 1. There was no 1988 section. The same gap appeared in the symbol index, payment receipts, and Helen's weekly notes. An entire year had been removed from 3 separate sets of records. Caleb checked the bottom of the box. Only dust remained. Iris examined the cloth, binding, and found a torn thread where several pages had once been sewn. Who could have removed them? Caleb asked. Iris remembered Ruth's warning. They will call the records stolen. Then she remembered something else Ruth had said before the sedan took her away. The root box was no longer behind the driver's seat. Ruth had known it had been moved. Perhaps she also knew who had taken the missing year. Iris closed the ledger. Somewhere, the pages containing the year she was born still existed, and only one living woman had admitted knowing where the box had been. The attack began before sunrise. At 5:40, a notice appeared on the garage door declaring the property subject to emergency repossession. At 6:05, a radio host described Iris as an unstable former employee holding private adoption records inside an unsafe bus. By 7, 2 reporters were parked beside the county road. The story included details Iris had never released. Her years in foster care, the conflicting dates on her birth file, even the name of the last family that had sent her away. A second envelope had been pushed beneath the door. It was a petition requesting temporary supervision of Iris's finances on the grounds that she was living in a condemned structure and showing fixation on imagined family records. No hearing had been scheduled, but the language carried the same polite cruelty Meredith had used since the auction. Concern written to function as a cage. Meredith did not need to destroy the evidence. She only needed to make Iris look like someone who invented it. Caleb read the notice twice. This seal is wrong. Iris compared it with the inspection order issued after the auction. The county emblem on the new notice lacked one of 3 wheat stalks. The signature belonged to Deputy Administrator Leonard Price, but the date beneath it fell on the previous Sunday. Price is in Arizona, Caleb said. His sister posted photographs yesterday. A tow truck turned into the lot, followed by a county utility van. The driver stepped out with a clipboard and a chain over one shoulder. We have an order to remove the vehicle. The bus is part of the property, Iris replied. Not according to this. He showed her a photocopy of the same notice. Call the sheriff, Caleb said. The driver smiled. Sheriff knows we're here. 2 workers moved toward the bus. Iris photographed their faces, truck plates, chains, and paperwork. One worker turned away. The driver did not. Where are you taking it? She asked. County storage. Which facility? He looked at the clipboard too long. North Yard. Bellwether County had no north storage yard. Caleb stepped between the chain and rear axle. You pull this without disconnecting the shelf assembly, you'll tear the frame. Move. Show me a valid order. The second worker shoved Caleb against the side panel. His shoulder struck metal with a hard crack. Iris called emergency dispatch and read the false seal number aloud while recording the call. The operator placed her on hold. The driver hooked the chain anyway. By the time a sheriff's cruiser appeared, the front wheels were already on the road. The deputy examined the notice for less than 10 seconds. Looks valid. Call Leonard Price, Iris said. He is out of state. The deputy turned toward her. Miss Penn, you have been warned about obstructing county business. The truck pulled away. Caleb grabbed his pickup keys. Iris locked the route ledger, symbol index, and carbon copies inside the metal chest, then carried it into his cab. What about the cards? He asked. They're still drying. Moving them could separate the layers. Leaving them could be worse. The decision cost them 3 minutes. When they reached the highway, the tow truck was a mile ahead. It did not turn toward the county offices. It headed east, toward Bellwether Metal Recovery. The crusher, Caleb said. Iris called dispatch again and reported suspected theft. The operator asked whether a court had recognized the materials as evidence. Not yet. Then this is a civil matter. The tow truck entered the recovery yard. Caleb drove through before the gate closed. Workers shouted as his pickup crossed the scale platform. The bookmobile had been lowered beside a hydraulic crusher. Its rear doors stood open. Loose books covered the mud. Iris climbed out with her camera. Do not touch that vehicle. The yard manager emerged, holding a receipt. We were paid for immediate destruction. By whom? He checked the paper. Bellwether County Library Foundation. The tow driver reached for the chain. As he turned, Iris saw his soles pressed into the mud. Narrow V-shaped channels. She photographed them. He lunged for the camera. Caleb caught his arm. The men struggled, slipped, and struck the bus. A shelf latch released inside. The restored shelving slid violently toward the open doors. Books, index slips, and damp checkout cards spilled into the wind. Paper rose over the yard in white and gray bursts. Iris ran after it. One card landed beneath the crusher track. Another caught against a fence. A third sailed over stacked appliances and vanished. Shut the machine down. The yard manager hesitated. Iris held up the foundation receipt. If you destroy that bus now, this proves who ordered it. That stopped him. Sirens sounded beyond the gate. Not the sheriff. State police. Dispatch had finally forwarded Iris's photographs of the false seal. The tow driver released Caleb and backed away. Mud filled the V-shaped tread of his shoes. State officers separated the men and impounded the truck. They photographed the foundation receipt, copied the false removal order, and took a cast of the driver's boot tread. They did not arrest Meredith or declare Iris right, but they halted the destruction and documented the false order. For the first time, a record existed outside Iris's notebook. One Meredith could not dismiss as the invention of a frightened woman living alone. By late afternoon, the bookmobile returned on a state flatbed. Its frame was twisted near the rear axle. One section of the hidden wall had split open. Dozens of cards were gone. Iris stared at the empty spaces on the drying racks. We should have copied them sooner, Caleb said. We copied enough to prove the system existed, not enough to restore every name. The words hurt because they were true. Caleb sat on the driver's step. There is something I did not tell you. Iris waited. After Saint Agnes closed, Helen gave me a second metal box, smaller than the route box. She told me to move it before the county inspection. Where? To her house. And after she died? I went back. The house was empty. The box was gone. You let me believe everything was in the bus. I hoped it was. What did it contain? She never showed me. She said it held the pages no foundation could be allowed to own. The missing year. Iris turned away before anger made her speak carelessly. Outside, a man stood near the roadside ditch, holding one of the cards blown from the yard. He was in his 40s, wearing a work jacket, and an expression Iris recognized from people who had found their names in the wrong file. He approached slowly. Is this yours? The card carried a yellow flower. My mother had that mark inside a box she never let me open, he said. She told me never to say where I came from. He looked toward the damaged bus. I think I need to know why. The man introduced himself as Daniel Crow. He remained beside the damaged bookmobile, holding the yellow flower card as if it might accuse him of something he had spent his life refusing to ask. My mother kept a wooden box with this flower carved into the lid, he said. She told me it belonged to someone who died before I was born. Was she your birth mother? Iris asked. Daniel's jaw tightened. She was my mother. I'm not asking you to take that away from her. That answer brought him inside. Daniel had been adopted in 1976 by a couple who owned a hardware store outside Bellwether. They had treated him well. He repeated that twice, as though asking about his beginning might be mistaken for betrayal. After his mother died, he found a receipt behind the lining of the flower-marked box. The Voss Family Foundation had accepted a payment labeled Residential Care and Placement Services. The amount was larger than his father's yearly income. "Bring it," Iris said. "It may show how the money moved." "And then you publish my parents' names?" "Nothing leaves this room with a name attached unless the person involved agrees." Daniel studied her, then nodded. He returned that evening with the box, the receipt, and a folded letter written on thin cream paper. His mother had found it inside a second-hand children's book and hidden it rather than destroy it. The writer had signed only with a flower. Iris compared the page with the carbon strip recovered from the bus. A diagonal pressure mark crossed the lower left corner of both. The spacing between 4 words matched exactly. The carbon paper had been beneath this letter when it was written. Daniel lowered himself into a chair. "What does it say?" Iris turned the page toward him. "I was told you would be safer if I stopped asking." "I did not stop." He read the sentence twice, then covered his mouth. The evidence now existed in 2 independent places: an original letter held by an adoptive family and its pressure copy hidden inside the bookmobile. Neither Iris nor Caleb could have manufactured both. By morning, Daniel had contacted Mara Bell, an attorney who specialized in sealed adoption records. Mara arrived with 2 locked cases and no promises. "Checkout cards are not legal adoption files," she said. "I know," Iris replied. "Symbols are not names. A payment does not prove coercion. I know that too." Mara studied her. "Good. Then we can build something that survives being challenged." They created a controlled inventory. Each object received a number, photograph, location record, and witness signature. Originals went into sealed sleeves. Iris built a separate index replacing names with neutral codes. Daniel signed consent allowing his receipt and letter to be examined without publicly identifying his adoptive parents. Mara also drafted a contact rule. No one would be approached through family members, employers, or public notices. Each person would receive 1 private inquiry and the right to refuse without explanation. Iris insisted on that clause. She had spent too much of her life having institutions decide what was best for her. A university archivist, Dr. Lena Holt, confirmed that the ink, paper, carbon sheet, and library stamps were consistent with the recorded dates. She did not decide what the materials meant. She established that they were not recent inventions. Iris remained the one who connected them. Across the garage wall, she built a table: root date, symbol, thread color, letter status, foundation payment, maintenance record, and later name change. Empty spaces remained visible, instead of being filled with guesses. The pattern strengthened. White square stops were followed by foundation deposits. Certain deposits were followed by closed records. Some symbols reappeared for years, suggesting women continued requesting contact long after placements were called final. Daniel watched the wall fill. "I thought you were trying to destroy my family," he said. "What changed?" "I realized someone else decided I could only love one mother if I never knew the other existed." Before Iris answered, Caleb entered through the side door. Ruth was with him. She wore the same cardigan, but the white button was gone. A bruise darkened one wrist. "I left before they came again," she said. Mara offered to call the police. "Not until I tell this correctly." Iris placed a recorder on the table but did not turn it on. "You choose what happens next." Ruth studied the evidence wall. The flower woman wrote every month for 3 years. The swallow woman came longer. Was the swallow woman named Eleanor? Ruth closed her eyes. That was the name she used when she arrived. It was not the name on her papers. "Why did you call me that?" "Because you have her eyes, and because Meredith called you the little swallow when she carried your file upstairs." The garage went silent. "Meredith worked at Saint Agnes?" Mara asked. She prepared placement packets, changed intake names, and decided which letters were marked undeliverable. Ruth pointed to the missing section of Iris's table. "The year you were born was the year Meredith controlled the records room." The discovery moved Meredith from keeper of an inherited secret to a direct participant. Ruth agreed to give a sworn statement if Mara arranged protection for her daughter, who had once copied files for Helen. Then she took Iris's hand. "Meredith kept the last forwarding address your mother sent. She used it to make sure no reply reached you. Do you know the address? No, Ruth said. But I know where Meredith keeps it. The federal hearing room had no jury box, only a raised panel, 2 long tables, and 6 rows of wooden benches filled before Iris arrived. Reporters occupied the aisle. Adoptive parents sat beside adults who had spent decades wondering whether their names were real. Former library employees kept their coats on, as if they might leave before being recognized. Meredith Voss sat at the opposite table in a navy suit, flanked by 3 attorneys and a foundation archivist Iris had never seen before. Mara placed the sealed evidence cases in front of Iris. "Answer only what is asked," she said. "Do not let them turn your life into the subject." Meredith's lead attorney stood first. He did not begin with Saint Agnes. He began with the fire. He asked whether Iris had moved the checkout cards after the intruder fled. She said yes. He asked whether she had numbered them before a law enforcement officer arrived. Yes. Whether she had stored them in a garage she owned. Yes. Whether some cards had later been soaked with kerosene, carried to another location, blown across a salvage yard, and recovered by different people. Yes. Each answer sounded smaller than the truth and more damaging than the last. So, you cannot testify that every card is in the same condition or position in which you found it. No. And no independent witness saw the hidden drawer before you opened it. No. He turned toward the panel. The Foundation does not deny that old library materials exist. It denies that Miss Penn's private arrangement of damaged paper proves a criminal adoption system. The first obstacle landed exactly where Mara had warned it would: chain of custody. Dr. Lena Holt testified that the paper, ink, stamps, and carbon impressions were consistent with the claimed decades. The attorney thanked her, then asked whether age proved meaning. "It does not," Lena said. "Whether a flower meant a mother, a child, or nothing at all is interpretation, unless corroborated by an independent source." He smiled. "Which brings us to Mrs. Danner." Ruth's chair in the witness row was empty. Mara checked the hallway again. A clerk entered and handed her a folded statement. Ruth Danner withdrew her testimony. The statement said age and stress had confused her memories. It denied that Meredith personally altered files and asked the panel not to rely on previous conversations. Iris read the signature twice. Ruth's hand had shaken through every letter. Meredith did not look at her. Mara requested a recess. The panel granted 15 minutes. In the corridor, Daniel found Ruth's daughter near the elevators, crying into both hands. A Foundation lawyer stood 20 feet away. "They told her they would name me as part of the scheme," the daughter said. "I copied records for Helen when I was 19. They said I could be charged with stealing sealed files." "Where is Ruth?" Iris asked. "In a car downstairs. She thinks withdrawing is the only way to protect me." The second obstacle was not missing evidence. It was fear passed from one woman to another until silence looked like love. When the hearing resumed, Meredith's attorneys moved to exclude Ruth's earlier statement and every symbol interpretation that depended on it. Then Meredith requested permission to address Iris directly. The panel allowed it. She carried a sealed envelope to the center table and placed it between them. "This contains the last known address used by the woman identified in connection with Miss Penn's birth," Meredith said. "The Foundation is willing to provide it immediately, along with funding for a private search." A reporter's camera clicked. "In return?" Iris asked. "Withdraw the request for public investigation. Transfer the originals to a neutral archive. Families who want information may petition privately." Through the Foundation? Through lawful channels. The envelope lay within reach. For 38 years, Iris had imagined information about her mother as something locked behind a door. Now Meredith offered the key in front of everyone, certain the room would understand why Iris should take it. Iris looked at the people on the benches. Some wanted names. Some feared them. No single answer could serve them all. She pushed the envelope back. "If a truth is given only to the person willing to keep everyone else silent, it is not a record," she said. "It is ransom." Meredith's face tightened. "You are willing to destroy living families for a theory." "No. I am asking that living people be allowed to decide what happens to their own histories." Mara called Daniel. He identified the flower-marked box, the Foundation receipt, and the original letter found by his adoptive mother. Lena had already established that the letter and carbon impression had been created together. Maintenance logs placed the Bookmobile at the white stop on the same date. Then, Mara introduced the financial records. The Voss Foundation receipt carried Daniel's symbol. A deposit entered 2 days later matched the amount listed as a placement contribution. A court order changing his name followed within the week. One sequence could be coincidence. The same sequence appeared across 11 consented cases. White square stop, symbol, foundation payment, name change. A letter marked received but not delivered. The attorney objected that patterns were not proof of coercion. Mara agreed. Then she produced medical intake forms showing sedatives administered before several relinquishment signatures, housing rules stating that women could not leave until paperwork was completed, and correspondence in which foundation officers discussed resistant mothers. The records did not require Ruth to explain what the system had done. They explained themselves. Meredith's attorney attacked the source. Some came from private family collections. Others were copies. None tied Meredith personally to Iris's missing year. A side door opened. Ruth entered with her daughter and 2 state investigators. She walked slowly to the witness table. "I signed the withdrawal because they threatened my child," she said. That was how Saint Agnes worked too. They made a woman believe surrender was the only way to protect someone she loved. The foundation attorney objected. The panel overruled him. Ruth described the buttons, Helen's books, and the letters marked undeliverable before anyone attempted delivery. She identified Meredith as the records assistant who controlled the upper office in 1988. Meredith finally spoke without permission. "She is lying." Ruth looked at her. "You called the baby the little swallow because her mother kept returning on Thursdays." The room changed, not loudly, no one gasped. But every face turned toward Meredith. She had used the same phrase Ruth had never heard from Iris. Mara asked about the missing pages. Ruth said Helen copied them before the root box was altered, then hid the copies with documents no one would think to search. Where? In the insurance inventory for her house. Lena stood at the rear of the room holding a file. After Caleb disclosed the second box, Mara had requested every surviving property and insurance record connected to Helen. The archive of the dissolved insurer had transmitted certified scans during the recess. The panel admitted them provisionally. The missing 1,988 route pages appeared on the screen. Beside the blue swallow was Iris's original given name, Elinor Vale. Under the mother column, someone had drawn a line through a name and typed a replacement address. The damaged capital A matched the added auction clause and Meredith's confidentiality agreement. Meredith had not merely inherited the secret. She had continued editing it. The panel ordered the foundation records seized, referred the false towing order and financial evidence for criminal investigation, and suspended Meredith's access to every sealed file. Iris did not feel victorious. She felt the weight of thousands of pages no one could safely open all at once. As officers approached Meredith's table, Iris looked again at the address beside her mother's crossed-out name. It was not in any Saint Agnes file, county index, or foundation ledger. Someone had hidden one road home where Meredith could not erase it. By the end of the week, Bellwether County no longer controlled the Saint Agnes files. A federal preservation order placed every foundation ledger, adoption register, route sheet, and sealed correspondence under an independent review board. Meredith's name disappeared from the access list. The towing company surrendered its records. The county suspended the deputy who had approved the false removal order, and investigators opened separate cases into the foundation payments and altered court documents. None of that returned a single lost year. Iris learned this while sitting at a folding table inside the damaged garage, surrounded by people who expected justice to feel larger than paperwork. Daniel received permission to request his original file. He did not open it that day. He placed the sealed copy beside the flower-marked box and said he wanted his children present when he did. Ruth entered protective custody with her daughter. She gave 3 days of sworn testimony, then asked for no public recognition. Helen Ward's name, however, was restored to the official library history. The county removed the sentence accusing her of mishandling records and replaced it with a statement acknowledging that she had preserved correspondence others attempted to destroy. The hearing panel also voided the emergency repossession order against Iris's property. Repairs to the garage and bus would be funded from assets frozen during the investigation, but the money would not pass through the Voss Foundation. Mara insisted on another condition. No government office, charity, or single family would control access again. The new archive board included adoptees, birth mothers, adoptive parents, archivists, and legal advocates. A person could request information, refuse contact, release only part of a file, or leave instructions for the future. No names would appear in newspapers merely because they had survived in a ledger. Some reporters complained that the process was too cautious. Iris disagreed. The women at Saint Agnes had already lost the right to decide once. Justice could not begin by taking that right away again. The first weeks brought no neat reunion stories. One mother had died without leaving a forwarding address. One son refused to read the letter recovered for him. Two sisters discovered they had been placed in neighboring counties and still chose not to meet. Several adoptive families feared being blamed for decisions they had never understood. Iris recorded each refusal as carefully as each request. No was also a truth the old system had ignored. The bookmobile returned to the garage on a state flatbed. Its rear frame had to be reinforced, the shelf rail replaced, and the electrical system rebuilt. Caleb examined the twisted axle and said it might never travel safely again. Iris ran her hand along the damaged panel. Then we make it safe. He nodded once. Volunteers arrived after Daniel spoke publicly. Retired mechanics repaired the steering assembly. A carpenter rebuilt the circulation desk without covering the compartment where the route box had been found. Lena designed climate-controlled drawers for letters and carbon sheets. Ruth sent instructions for sewing the old symbols into protective cloth covers, but Iris asked that every new file also carry a plain number anyone could understand. Nothing important would depend on a secret code again. At the end of the month, the criminal investigation confirmed that the Voss Foundation had collected placement payments while presenting itself as a charitable maternity service. Several cases were too old to prosecute. Others depended on witnesses who were gone. Meredith faced charges tied to evidence destruction, fraud, coercion, and the false towing order, but no sentence could account for every family divided under her watch. The announcement drew applause outside the courthouse. Iris did not join it. She thought of the cards that had blown beyond the salvage yard fence. Some might still be trapped beneath weeds or buried under metal. The names connected to them might never return. Mara found her beside the bus that evening. "You did enough," she said. "Enough for what?" "To stop them from doing it again." Iris looked at the rows of empty archival drawers, waiting to be filled. Stopping the harm mattered. It was not the same as repairing all of it. On the work table lay the certified copy of the 1,988 page. Beside Eleanor Vale's name was the address no county record recognized. Caleb had traced it to a private mailbox service 300 miles west. The business had closed years earlier, but its forwarding logs had been transferred to a small municipal archive. The restored bus was not ready for passengers. It was barely ready for the road. Iris placed the page inside a protective sleeve. For the first time, she was not following a route someone else had altered. She was choosing where the bookmobile would go next. The bookmobile left Bellwether on a cold morning in March. Its new paint was cream and pale blue, close to the colors Caleb remembered from the original route. The rear frame no longer shuddered over every rut. The shelves locked into place when the bus turned, and the restored heater breathed warm air through the aisle. Iris sat behind the wheel with the certified address inside her coat. Caleb rode beside her, watching every gauge. Mara and Daniel followed in a separate car carrying the first sealed files approved for delivery. No reporters knew the route. 300 miles west, the address led them to a brick building that had once housed a pharmacy. The private mailbox service was gone, its painted name covered by a laundromat sign. A municipal archivist brought out a forwarding ledger wrapped in gray paper. "Mailbox 214 belonged to Nora Vale," she said. She renewed it every year until 2018. Her pause answered the question Iris had not asked. Nora Vale had died 4 years earlier in a small apartment near the river. She had no spouse or children listed in the obituary. Her belongings had gone to a neighbor who helped her during the final months. The neighbor, Mrs. Harlan, opened her door with the chain fastened. When Iris explained why she had come, the woman studied her face. Nora said someone might arrive one day with a bird. She removed the chain. Mrs. Harlan had kept one box. Nora asked her never to discard. It was plain cardboard, repaired with blue cloth tape. A swallow had been drawn on the lid. Iris sat at the kitchen table before touching it. Inside were letters arranged by year. The earliest was addressed to baby Eleanor. Later envelopes carried different names because Nora had never known which one the county had given her daughter. Some were marked with foster agencies that no longer existed. Others had been returned unopened. At the bottom lay a notebook recording every Thursday Nora had traveled to the White Building or waited beside the Bookmobile route. Rain, snow, no bus. Helen said, "Try again next week." The entries continued for 12 years. Iris opened the first letter. Nora did not ask forgiveness or claim she had done everything right. She wrote that she signed a paper while weak from medication because a woman upstairs said she could not leave otherwise. When she returned the next morning, the crib was empty. She had been told her baby was already with a better family. Then came the sentence Iris had needed all her life. "I did not stop looking for you." Iris lowered the page. The pipes still knocked inside the wall. A washing machine turned below them. Caleb remained near the window, giving her the privacy of silence. There would be no embrace at a doorway. No living voice to answer what the records could not. But absence was no longer proof of abandonment. Mrs. Harlan gave Iris a cloth name tag Nora had sewn by hand, ELINOR, stitched in uneven blue thread. Saint Agnes had returned it after the child was removed. Iris held it beside the identification card clipped to her coat. For most of her life, she believed one name had to cancel the other. Eleanor belonged to the child who disappeared. Iris Penn belonged to the woman who survived. Now she understood both were hers. The Bookmobile made its first official stop 2 weeks later. It parked outside a community center halfway between Bellwether and the former Saint Agnes property. Children entered through the front to choose books. Adults with appointments used the rear door, where the old hidden compartments now held climate-controlled drawers and consent forms written in plain language. No symbol was required to ask for help. The first recipient was an 82-year-old woman named Alice. She had approved contact with the son taken from her in 1962, but he had died before the archive found her. His daughter had agreed to receive Alice's letter and send one of her own. Iris carried the sealed envelope to Alice's chair. The older woman did not open it. She held it with both hands and asked whether she could wait until her sister arrived. "You can wait as long as you need," Iris said. That was the promise the old system had never made. Across the room, Daniel helped his children choose a book. Ruth showed a young archivist how to repair loose stitching. Caleb stood near the driver's seat listening to the engine, as if the bus might confess one final problem. Iris placed Nora's letters in a drawer beneath the circulation desk. She kept the first one with her, not as evidence, but as a beginning. Then she placed her childhood book beside them. The blue swallow no longer marked a secret route or a woman no one was permitted to name. It had become the emblem beside the bus door, a bird turning toward home. Iris pinned a new badge to her coat. The first line read Eleanor Vale. The second read Iris Penn. One name had been given before others tried to erase her. The other had been built across every place that failed to keep her. Outside, another family approached carrying a sealed letter. Iris opened the door. The world had once given her a name meant to hide where she came from. She kept it not as a wound, but as proof that even after they erased the road behind her, she had still found a way to lead others home.